An HOA board invaded private creek rights with their fishing rods, thinking they owned the water. Big mistake. The property owner had every single one of them cited for criminal trespass. And what happened next will shock you. The legal fallout. The emergency meetings, the revenge. This is the ultimate property rights battleground. Stay until the end because the final twist will blow your mind. Let's get into it. Smash that subscribe button and hit the bell icon for Neighbor Wars HQ, where property battles get real. Welcome back to Neighbor Wars HQ, where we bring you the most insane neighbor disputes, HOA nightmares, and property rights battles that'll make your blood boil. Today's story is absolutely wild, and it involves something most people don't even know exists: creek rights. Picture this. You've just purchased your dream property. Beautiful land, peaceful surroundings, and running right through it is a pristine creek with crystal clear water. But here's the kicker. You didn't just buy the land around the creek, you bought the actual water rights to that creek. That means legally you own the creek bed, the water flowing through it, and everything in between. Now, most people in your neighborhood have no idea what creek rights even are. They think water is just water, public domain, free for everyone. But in property law, water rights are serious business, and they can be worth tens of thousands of dollars, sometimes even more than the land itself. Our property owner, let's call him Marcus, had done his homework. When he purchased this property, the title clearly stated that he owned exclusive creek rights for a 600-foot stretch running through his land. This wasn't some vague claim. This was documented, surveyed, legally binding ownership that went back decades. Marcus had the deed, the survey maps, the historical records, everything. But Marcus lived in an HOA community. And if you've been watching this channel, you know what that means. Drama, control issues, power-hungry board members who think they run the entire neighborhood like their personal kingdom. The HOA in Marcus's neighborhood was particularly aggressive. They had a reputation for overstepping boundaries, literally and figuratively. Fines for grass being half an inch too tall. Violations for the wrong shade of mailbox paint. Demands to approve every single exterior modification down to garden gnomes. But the HOA board had their eyes on something bigger: Marcus's creek. Several HOA board members were avid fishermen. They'd been fishing in that creek for years, long before Marcus bought the property. The previous owner had been elderly, rarely visited the back portion of the land, and never enforced the creek rights. So the board members just assumed they could keep fishing there forever. When Marcus moved in, he noticed something immediately. There were clear trails leading to his creek, trampled vegetation, discarded fishing line, even a makeshift bench someone had built on HIS property, right next to his creek. Marcus wasn't an unreasonable guy. He put up polite signs: private property. Creek rights own, no trespassing. He figured that would be enough. Clear communication, legal boundaries established, problem solved, right? Wrong. The HOA board saw those signs, and they were furious. How dare this new guy come in and restrict their access to community water? They'd been fishing there for years. This was tradition. This was their recreational area. The HOA president, a guy named Donald, who fancied himself a real estate expert despite having zero legal training, sent Marcus a certified letter. The letter was dripping with condescension. It claimed that the creek was navigable water and, therefore, public domain. It stated that Marcus's signs were creating a hostile environment in the community. It demanded Marcus remove the signs within 72 hours or face fines. Marcus read that letter and laughed. Navigable water. This creek was maybe 3 feet wide and 6 inches deep in most places. You couldn't navigate a toy boat through it, let alone claim it was public waterway. The legal ignorance was astounding. But Marcus didn't just laugh it off. He responded with his own certified letter, attaching copies of his deed, the survey, showing his creek rights, and a legal opinion from a property attorney explaining exactly what creek rights meant. He explained calmly and clearly that the HOA had no legal claim to his water rights, and that continued trespassing would result in legal consequences. You'd think that would settle it. Legal documentation, attorney backing, clear property rights. But this is an HOA we're talking about. Logic and law don't always apply. 2 weeks later, on a beautiful Saturday morning, Marcus was working in his home office when he heard voices. Loud voices, laughing, coming from his backyard. He looked out the window and couldn't believe what he saw. 7 people. 7 HOA board members and their friends, loaded up with fishing gear, coolers, folding chairs, the whole setup. They had walked right past his no trespassing signs, crossed his property, and were actively fishing in his creek. The audacity was breathtaking. Marcus grabbed his phone and walked out there. He was calm but firm. "Excuse me, you're on private property. I need you to leave immediately." Donald, the HOA president, looked up with this smug smile. "Marcus's buddy, we got legal advice too. This is navigable water. Can't restrict access to navigable water. We have every right to be here. This isn't navigable water," Marcus said. "And even if it was, you're on my private property to access it. That's trespassing regardless." Another board member, a woman named Patricia, chimed in. "We've been fishing here for 12 years. We have established rights through continuous use. Look it up, adverse possession." Marcus almost laughed again. These people had watched too many legal dramas. Adverse possession requires exclusive and hostile possession for a statutory period. And it certainly doesn't apply when there's clear ownership with periodic enforcement attempts. "I'm asking you nicely one time," Marcus said. "Leave now, or I'm calling the police." Donald stood up, puffed out his chest. "Call them. We're not going anywhere. And when you do, we're filing a complaint with the HOA for harassment and threatening behavior. It's a $500 fine, by the way." That was the moment Marcus realized these people would never respect boundaries. They were so drunk on their tiny bit of HOA power that they genuinely believed they were above property law. So Marcus did exactly what he said he would. He called the police. Now, in most neighbor disputes, when police show up, they say it's a civil matter and tell everyone to work it out or get lawyers involved. But trespassing? That's criminal, especially when the property owner has clear signage, has asked people to leave, and they've refused. 2 sheriff's deputies arrived within 20 minutes. Marcus met them at the front of his property and explained the situation. He showed them his deed with the creek rights, showed them the survey maps, showed them the certified letters he'd sent to the HOA. He showed them his no trespassings. And then he walked them to the creek, where 7 people were still fishing like they didn't have a care in the world. The deputies approached the group. "Folks, we need to see some identification. We've received a trespassing complaint." Donald immediately went into his authority routine. "Officer, I'm the HOA president of this community. This is a legal dispute about water rights. This is navigable water under state law, and we have every right to be here." The deputy, who'd probably dealt with more property disputes than Donald had ever read about, just shook his head. "Sir, the property owner has clear deed rights to this creek. He has posted no trespassing signs. He has asked you to leave. You've refused. That's criminal trespass." "This is ridiculous," Patricia shouted. "We're being harassed." "Oh, ma'am, you're on private property without permission. That's the legal definition of trespassing." What happened next was absolutely beautiful. The deputies proceeded to ask all 7 people for identification. They ran everyone's information. And then, one by one, they issued criminal trespass citations to every single person. Not warnings. Actual citations that would require court appearances. Donald turned red. "This is absurd. We're pillars of this community. You can't treat us like criminals. You're being treated like trespassers, because that's what you are," the deputy said flatly. "You need to gather your belongings and leave this property immediately. If you return without the owner's permission, you'll be arrested for a defiant trespass, which carries much stiffer penalties." The group packed up their fishing gear in humiliated silence. As they walked past Marcus, Donald hissed, "You're going to regret this. The HOA will make your life hell." Marcus just smiled. "See you in court." If you thought the HOA would back down after getting cited by police, you don't know HOAs. They doubled down. Hard. Within 3 days, Marcus received a notice of violation from the HOA. The charges: creating a hostile living environment, harassment of community members, unauthorized modification of common areas referring to as private property signs. And here's the kicker. Restricting access to community recreational facilities. Each violation carried a $500 fine. Total, $2,000. But it gets better. The notice stated that if Marcus didn't pay within 30 days, the fines would increase by $100 per day, and the HOA could place a lien on his property. Marcus read through this notice with his attorney, and they both agreed this was retaliatory and legally baseless. You can't fine someone for enforcing their own property rights. Claim private property is a community recreational facility. And you certainly can't punish someone for involving law enforcement in a criminal matter. So Marcus's attorney sent a letter back, a very specific letter. It detailed how the HOA's actions constituted harassment, retaliation, and abuse of authority. It pointed out that imposing fines for lawful exercise of property rights could be considered a civil rights violation. And it included a demand. The HOA must retract all fines, issue a formal apology, and ensure board members would respect Marcus's property rights going forward. The deadline? 7 days, or Marcus would file a lawsuit. The HOA's response. They scheduled an emergency board meeting and invited Marcus to discuss the matter. The implication was clear. They wanted to negotiate, to find some compromise where they could save face. Marcus attended that meeting, attorney in tow. And what he walked into was an absolute circus. The emergency HOA meeting was held in the community clubhouse. Net was packed. Word had spread through the neighborhood about the fishing incident, the police citations, and the retaliatory fines. Some residents were on Marcus's side, sick of the board's overreach. Others sided with the board, viewing Marcus as an outsider disrupting their traditions. Donald called the meeting to order with all the self-importance of a judge at a Supreme Court hearing. We're here tonight to address a serious matter affecting our community. A new resident has taken extreme action against long-standing community members, resulting in criminal citations over a disputed water access issue. Marcus's attorney immediately objected. Point of order. There is no dispute. My client has clear, documented ownership of creek rights. This meeting appears to be a continuation of harassment and retaliation. You're out of order, Donald snapped. You're not even a resident here. I'm legal counsel for a property owner, addressing HOA violations of his rights. I have every authority to be here. The meeting devolved quickly. Patricia presented a PowerPoint, yes, really arguing that the creek was historically used for recreation, and that Marcus was destroying community cohesion. Another board member claimed property values would plummet if residents couldn't access the creek. A third suggested that Marcus's real motive was to spite the HOA because he was antisocial. Through it all, Marcus stayed calm. When it was finally his turn to speak, he stood up and addressed the room. I want to make something very clear, he said. I purchased this property legally. My deed includes exclusive creek rights, which I own. Just as surely as I own my house. When I discovered people trespassing repeatedly, I asked them politely to stop. When they refused, I involved law enforcement. It's not extreme. That's called enforcing the law. You had us arrested. Someone shouted from the crowd. You were cited for trespassing because you were, in fact, trespassing. Or disagree, you're welcome to argue your case in court. But this HOA has no authority over my private property rights, and attempting to fine me for exercising those rights is illegal. The room erupted. Some people clapped, others booed. Donald banged his gavel. Yes, he had a gavel demanding order. Then Marcus's attorney dropped the bomb. The fines issued to Mr. Marcus are legally void and constitute harassment. Furthermore, if this board continues its retaliatory actions, we will file suit not just against the HOA entity, but against board members personally for abuse of authority and violation of property rights. That means your personal assets could be at risk. The room went silent. Board members looked at each other nervously. The threat of personal liability is the nuclear option in HOA disputes, and it clearly rattled them. Donald tried to regain control. We'll take this under advisement and reconvene. No, Marcus interrupted. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to retract these fines tonight. You're going to issue a formal statement clarifying that my property, including my creek rights, are private and off limits. And you're going to instruct all community members that trespassing on my land will result in prosecution if you don't. I'm filing suit Monday morning. The HOA board called for a closed executive session, kicking everyone except board members out of the clubhouse. Marcus and his attorney waited outside with dozens of curious residents who wanted to know what would happen. After 45 minutes, the board emerged. Donald looked like he'd aged 10 years. He read from a prepared statement. After consultation with our legal counsel, the board has determined that the fines previously issued will be suspended pending further legal review. We encourage all residents to respect property boundaries and private ownership rights. It was a weak face-saving statement, but it was enough. The fines were gone. Marcus had won round one, but the story doesn't end there, not even close. Over the next few weeks, Marcus noticed something interesting. Several residents approached him privately to apologize for the board's behavior. They shared their own stories of HOA overreach, fines for holiday decorations, demands to remove bird feeders, threats over fence heights that were completely legal under county code. Coalitions started forming. Residents who were tired of the board's authoritarian behavior began meeting separately. They reviewed the HOA bylaws and discovered something fascinating. The board had been operating outside its own rules for years. Fines imposed without proper notice. Decisions made without required votes. Expenditures approved without financial transparency. Marcus became an inadvertent leader of this reform movement. He didn't seek it out, but his willingness to stand up to the board inspired others. Within 3 months, a petition circulated calling for a special election to remove the entire HOA board. It required signatures from 40% of homeowners. They got 62%. The special election was scheduled, and it was brutal. The existing board members campaigned on stable-eyed tradition. The reform candidates, including 2 people Marcus supported, campaigned on transparency, legal compliance, and respect for property rights. Election day came, and it wasn't even close. Every single incumbent board member was voted out. Donald, Patricia, all of them gone. The new board's first action? Formally apologizing to Marcus and officially recognizing his creek rights, and the community records their second action. Hiring an independent auditor to review the previous board's finances, and that audit discovered something very interesting. The financial audit revealed that the previous HOA board had been mismanaging funds for years. It's not quite embezzlement, but definitely questionable expenditures. Community improvement funds had been used for personal benefits, thousands of dollars. Spent on legal consultation shit were actually just the board members' personal disputes. Contracts awarded to companies owned by board members' relatives without competitive bidding. But here's where it ties back to Marcus's situation. Remember, all those aggressive enforcement actions, fines, and violations the old board was famous for, the audit showed that the fines weren't being used for community improvements. They were padding the budget to cover the board's excessive spending. Marcus's $2,000 in bogus fines? That was part of a pattern. The old board had issued over $50,000 in questionable fines in just 2 years, many of them for minor or fabricated violations. The new board sent letters to every homeowner who'd been fined in the past 3 years, offering a review process. Several residents got refunds. Some had liens removed. It was a complete overhaul. As for the criminal trespass citations, all 7 of the people cited ended up pleading guilty to reduced charges. Most got small fines and community service. Donald fought his case and lost, ending up with a larger fine and the trespassing conviction on his record. But the real victory for Marcus wasn't the legal outcome. It was the precedent. His property rights were now crystal clear and protected. The new HOA board included language in the community rules explicitly stating that private property rights, including water and mineral rights, supersede any HOA claims. Future buyers would know exactly what they owned, and that creek
Marcus
actually made a generous decision. He granted limited access to 2 families in the neighborhood whose children he'd met and liked. Not fishing access, but permission for the kids to explore nature, look for tadpoles, that kind of thing. Supervised. Scheduled, respectful. It showed that he was never the bad guy. He just wanted his property rights respected. When people showed respect, he was happy to share. So what can we learn from Marcus's Creek Rights War? Several crucial lessons about property ownership, HOA dynamics, and standing up for your rights. Most property buyers never fully understand what they've purchased. Mineral rights, water rights, air rights, easements, these aren't just technicalities. They're valuable property interests. Marcus did his homework. He knew exactly what his deed included, and that knowledge was his strongest weapon. Marcus kept copies of everything: his deed, his surveys, his letters to the HOA, his communications with the trespassers. When the situation escalated, he had a paper trail that proved his case definitively. In property disputes, documentation is everything. The HOA board counted on Marcus being intimidated. They assumed he'd back down when threatened with fines, liens, and social ostracism. But Marcus understood that bullies only have power if you give it to them. By standing firm and involving law enforcement, he called their bluff. HOAs have authority over common areas and architectural standards within the scope of their governing documents, but they cannot override your fundamental property rights. You can't be fined for exercising legal ownership of something you legitimately own. When the HOA tried to fine Marcus for involving police, they crossed a major legal line: retaliation against homeowners for exercising legal rights is prohibited in most states and can result in the HOA and individual board members being held liable. Marcus's stand inspired other residents to challenge the board's overreach. Sometimes one person standing up for their rights creates a catalyst for broader change. The reform movement that followed improved life for the entire community. Every HOA dispute is worth fighting. But when it comes to fundamental property rights and criminal behavior like trespassing, those battles are worth winning. Marcus chose his fight carefully and saw it through. The Creek Rights War illustrates something we see again and again here at Neighbor Wars HQ: the importance of knowing your rights and being willing to defend them. HOAs can be wonderful organizations that maintain property values and create community cohesion. But they can also become little fiefdoms where power-hungry board members abuse their authority. Marcus's story had a happy ending because he was prepared, persistent, and principled. He didn't seek conflict, but he didn't shy away from it when his rights were violated. And ultimately, his actions benefited the entire community by exposing corruption and bringing in responsible leadership. If you're dealing with an HOA dispute, here's what you need to do. First, read your CC and RS and bylaws thoroughly. Second, document every interaction. Third, know your state's HOA laws. Many states have homeowner protections that boards routinely ignore. Fourth, don't be afraid to involve authorities when criminal behavior occurs. And fifth, connect with other homeowners who share your concerns. One final note: if you enjoyed this story and want to hear more HOA nightmares, property battles, and neighbor wars, make sure you're subscribed to Neighbor Wars HQ. Hit that subscribe button. Smash the notification bell and drop a comment telling me what you think about this case. Should Marcus have been more accommodating? Did the HOA board get what they deserved? What would you have done in this situation? And if you have your own neighbor war story, email it to us. Your battle could be featured in an upcoming episode. Remember, whether it's fence disputes, tree wars, HOA overreach, or parking battles, we're here to bring you the most compelling property rights conflicts happening across America. Because at Neighbor Wars HQ, we believe your home should be your castle and you have every right to defend it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video, where we'll cover an even crazier dispute involving a property line. Surveying error that led to a 12-year legal battle. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Till then, know your rights, protect your property, and never let bullies win. This has been Neighbor Wars HQ. Stay safe, stay informed, and keep fighting the good fight.